Hello everyone and happy Monday. This is Laura of Enerstructa, and today our zero energy homes topic is going to be about diagnostic testing, specifically the blower door test. So blower door testing and diagnostic testing in general is a way for you to have your home tested, and it can be applied to new and existing homes so that you're not only just building to an airtightness standard that you think is good, but you can actually prove it with a test and actually measure that via the test. So someone said, if you're not testing, you're just guessing. Some states require you to do a blower door test to get the certificate of occupancy. So I live in Oregon. Oregon does not specifically require testing. They do say the homes are supposed to be under 6 air changes per hour, but there is no requirement for actually getting that measurement. So it's just assumed if you are building to the current code that you should be at least 6 air changes per hour or lower, which I have found is not necessarily always the case. So yeah, it's kind of an interesting requirement, but they say you're supposed to be building to this, but they don't actually make you measure it. But Washington, on the other hand, Washington State requires a blower door test, and Washington requires you to be under 5 air changes per hour. So that is a little bit tighter than the Oregon requirement. So they actually have you fill out a form and give it to the code inspector. So every state's a little different. So some states require it, some states just set these targets but don't actually make you measure it. So what the blower door test is, before we get into that, so some really tight homes, you might have heard of passive houses. Those are some super airtight homes, and the requirement for those are to be at 0.6 air changes per hour. So less than 1. So that's a really tight home. And then they have their ventilation system to make sure they're getting fresh air into the house. So anyway, there's a range of scale. Typically, new construction houses that I am testing are around the 2.5 air change per hour to 3, maybe a little bit above that, for some of these higher performing homes that I am testing. So you can get there without getting too rigorous about the air sealing details. So what the test actually involves is setting up a fan in the front door or a garage door, an exterior door of the house will work. Sometimes, especially with newer construction, the doors are really big, and so I have to find a door that is the right size, so it can be 3 feet wide by 8 feet tall. So I set this fan in the door. It has this shroud on it that helps seal off the whole opening. And then I make sure all of the exterior windows and doors are closed and that all of the interior doors are open and that appliances are set to off or standby. And then I get the fan set up. I have a tool called a manometer, and that actually is what reads the numbers. So I set up the test and start the fan. So usually I run a depressurization test. So it's like pulling air out of the house, and then it's able to measure air leaks that are coming into the house from whatever those locations are, such as attics, crawl spaces, recessed lights, etc. And so I'm able to get a number on the manometer, and that is not the air change per hour number. It's a different number, but I just do a calculation, and it's based on the volume of the house. So I take the air changes because I get an air changes per hour number. So So I do a calculation to get, or sorry, it's a cubic feet per minute number, and then I do a calculation with the volume of the house to get the air changes per hour reading. So that just kind of enables me to actually like figure out how tight the house is and get a number that is comparable across building codes and states. And so it's just a standardized type of test. And then when I do that test, I also like to take my infrared camera and walk around the home and see where the air leaks are, because during the test, the air leaks get exaggerated because it's basically like blowing a 20 mile per hour wind down the house. And so any air leaks that are happening are just going to be more obvious. And so for normal day-to-day life, you might not notice them as much unless you live in a windier area. Like we kind of live in a windier area here in the gorge. So depending on how hard the wind is blowing during the day, you may or may not notice those air leaks. So yeah, I like to pair the infrared test just to give me a more visual understanding of what's going on, so I can communicate that with the builder and potentially the homeowner and look for ways to improve that number or just make sure that they've passed. It's kind of, with technology right now, it's hard to have 0 air changes per hour, so it just kind of is what it is. There is a product called Aero Barrier, or a company called Aero Barrier, and they do like this air sealing strategy where they can, basically they do a blower door test, and then there's like this material that sticks to areas that have air leaks, and they can really easily get down to a tighter air change per hour number. And you can do that on an existing home too, because sometimes it's harder to get existing homes really tight. So yeah, that's blower door testing. I think I was going to say something else, but I think I'll just keep it at that. And I will be back here next week talking about probably another diagnostic test. Maybe we'll talk about duct leakage testing. So, all right. Bye for now. Take care.